the top 10 companies in the world are AI companies. So NVIDIA became the top company in the world. It's an AI company. And so it produces basically the backbone infrastructure of AI. And so when you have that, means that the world economy has changed. And so that is already a very important signal.
Today, we're joined by Patricia Lizarraga, who spent 3 decades on Wall Street before founding the Hypatia Women CEO ETF. Your investment thesis is straightforward. Women CEOs outperform, and you've got the data to prove it. And as always, Bruno Lorenzelli, CEO and founder of Scalata.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Great to meet you.
So we're talking today about capital allocation and what decades of experience that both of you have had that led you to the experiences where you are today. And specifically, Patricia, we want to know what this ETF has looked like for you, what success you've seen, and what we're looking at moving forward.
Sure. So we launched the ETF 3 years ago on January 9th. So we have a 3-year trading record, and on February 2nd, we'll have the actual 3-year track record up on Bloomberg. And again, we launched it with the investment thesis that women CEOs will outperform because it's harder to get to the top. What we've seen is that we outperform after fees by more than 50 basis points since inception. And in 2025, we beat our index, which is our comparable index, which is the S&P 600, by 370 basis points, which in the public markets, as you know, is quite a bit. So the performance has been incredibly successful. What has not been as fast as we wanted was the assets under management. And as an independent ETF issuer, it's very, very hard to grow if you aren't on one of the pre-established platforms. So we're in a chicken and the egg situation, and are we the chicken or are we the egg? You know, we're slowly climbing up, but I think it'll be like a J curve once we hit a certain size. We have a workforce, I would say, split, where some of the workforce is very open to using AI to advance their career. Obviously, that's younger people, but a lot of people are really scared that it's going to take their job, so they're talking about the risks.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see it happening like in live.
Both the fear around AI taking over jobs, and then I know I've heard Bruno talk about the opportunity about AI in creating new types of jobs.
Yeah, in my view, AI is more like empowering people to produce more. So you don't really replace people with AI. Basically, the whole story around investing on this new, industrial revolution is that, the same workforce is going to be more efficient, faster, more accurate. And I give you just, some example. You have a transaction management or a loan officer. Instead of, handling 5 applications per day, he can do 50, he can do 100, okay? And so then you can build, a pipeline of products going from, payday loans to all the way to, immigrants loans, consumer banking. You can build new product pipelines. You can empower the people to do way more. And so if you bring economies of scales, each one of those, companies, individuals, stuff like that, will produce more volumes. So at the end of the day, what you have is that a small credit union, instead of doing 10 billion per annum, they can do 100 billion per annum. And if this is multiplied across the board, and you have the big banks doing even more, so on the one hand, you bring more liquidity into the market. So what it means that the GDP, global GDP, will grow. This is AI. The objective of the way you measure is not by firing people. The way you measure is that how many more things I've done in terms of revenues, transactions, markets, productivity with the same amount of people, or also teaching. So I hire people here. It takes me an awful lot of time to train them. AI will complement that. By using AI, they will learn more, they will do more, they will do things faster. You need to look at all the errors, the exceptions, the build-up, the prompt engineering. Generative AI, if you don't build the ground up and it works across the board, and today is also very expensive to run. No one can afford it. If you run and live on Gen AI, It costs more to run it than to actually have an employee doing it. Why? Because they keep clicking on this. Every time you click, there are tokens. Every time you run a digest data and you query, you spend, basically, you can spend $100 a day, a single user. If you really use it professionally, it's very expensive. So we still lack the infrastructure, data centers, stuff like that, to really run it properly. We lack it, we don't have it. It's like when internet was created, we didn't have internet service provider, and you remember that everything was on copper, and then they put fiber optics. Why? Because it was cheaper. And you had to
I
use
think
money.
that's a good point. I think that when the market tanked in the end of 2024, I think it was, because of the news of the Chinese DeepSeek being able to process the information so less expensively, I think it was a wake-up call to the rest of the world to say, this is the next step, because unless we can figure out how to process this data in a cheaper way, it's really not sustainable that for $20 a month, which is what I pay for ChatGPT, I can ask it to do what I'm asking it to do, because I know that it's taking up much more energy than that. Deficient, it's just not going to work. So I think there's a lot still that needs to happen.
The question at hand is that you started this index. You are seeing the success in the past, few years and how that's growing. And the question at hand is what did you expect AI to influence? And then how has that actually happened?
So I think first it's important to understand what the Hypatia Women CEO ETF does, because I'll be able to answer the question. So what our ETF does is we invest in all American public companies that have a female CEO and a market cap of over $500 million. So there's 155 approximately of those companies, and they are in every single industry classification. The 11 industry classifications, we have at least five companies in each one of those. So we really are investing in a cross-section of the United States economy. Our investment thesis is that women CEOs will outperform. In order to deliver that investment thesis, we had to figure out a process by which we would deliver just the female factor, not any other factor, just the female factor. And we did it by including all the women, removing size as a factor, and removing industry as a factor. So then we can get into the technical details later if you want. But because once you remove those two factors, what you have left is basically stock picking, and I already said how we picked our stocks. So all the answer, and all the commentary that I can give in the conversation is based on the knowledge that I have from observing the 155 companies run by women in the United States as a group.
Yeah.
So that's what we do, and it is outperforming its benchmark by a lot. So as of now, the thesis holds.
The data that you have had access to has been evolving, and also you've improved the amount of data that you can now see and use. From your perspective and from what you've heard, what was the hype for how AI was going to be utilized in companies? And then how are you seeing that in reality? And where is AI being used? What are the use cases?
Okay, so here I have to, on full disclosure, in addition to being the Chief Investment Officer of the Hypatia Women CEO ETF, I'm also on the board of Credicorp Limited, $20 billion market cap on the New York Stock Exchange, and is the major financial conglomerate in Peru, where I also chair the audit committee for all of our subsidiaries. I have what I read in the news, what I see from our 155 small positions, and then what I see as a board member. Yeah. And I think that it's been evolving, right? First, we were told that AI was going to be able to really cut down on the financial control issues in a company because there was going to be much more automation, right? And that didn't really pan out the way we thought it would. Then we were told, and specifically by the big auditing firms, agentic AIs are going to take out the audit function. We see us having, in 10 years, half the amount of people. And we have not yet seen that happen. The next function that we also have been told was going to become completely automated was the personalization of marketing, right? We had this idea where you would be able to send, I think we have 7 million customers, each one gets a different kind of marketing piece with their picture in it. And we haven't seen that happen either. Mm-hmm. I think that the actual gains by AI to date have not been what they were hyped up to be in the beginning.
And this tracks. I mean, this tracks. We're still at the very beginning and of what's to come. And Bruno, are you surprised to hear this as somebody who is building generative AI infrastructure?
Obviously, there have been many investments on startups. So you have globally, but particularly in USA, an incredible production of new, if you like, ventures, new technologies. Obviously, all this, I would say young kids trying to, make their own ideas and stuff like that. And then, obviously, unfortunately, facing the reality of the complexity of creating a company, having the funds, paying salaries, having the technology. I mean, my personal experience that I was there, and I was one of the first promoters, I'd say globally, and I saw the clouds, of the three major players like Microsoft, Google, and AWS. And there were no clouds built for AI, generative AI, okay? And today they spent a very, silly figure there to change the entire cloud offering, okay? So all the databases, the apps, the servers, they are all Gen AI transformed and connected. And so before they were not. And so that facilitated, make it easier to deploy a technology even for a startup or deploy, if you like, or try and test something, build what is called the MVP or the first model. Now, the top 10 companies in the world are AI companies. So NVIDIA became the top company in the world. It's an AI company. And so it produces basically the backbone infrastructure of AI. And so when you have that, means that the world economy has changed. And so that is already a very important signal in general. And particularly the most important signal is that when generative AI doesn't maintain the promise, the global stock exchange is collapsing, and it happened in October and November, okay? And so this is a second sign, the fact that we don't have any global avenue at the moment, apart from generative AI, to promote global growth, okay, global GDP growth. We see more employment, more liquidity into the market, more financial product trading. There is no new global avenue that could be, like the oil industry or the industrialization of Africa. There isn't. The only global driver at the moment, even China went into some sort of stalemate because of the real estate. It's the only avenue the world has to grow. There's no other idea at the moment. We can't go to Mars, so this is only this. That's the most important thing. So we are, yes, at the beginning, but we've seen very interesting developments. So it's a productivity change at the end of the day. So you're creating a super soldier, someone that can do more efficient, faster, learn, basically providing more, kind of knowledge and energy to that kind of individual. Now, all of these chatbots that we know, they're all losing money. They're not making money. They're built for, for basically out of curiosity of individuals. This is where really the real money will come, like the use cases. It's like the kind of CRM, as you mentioned, that we're seeing interesting, very interesting use cases there.
I'm curious, what kind of use cases are you seeing?
Oh, there are lots of startups. That one Israeli startup, it's called Wonderful. They just raised 100 billion from. It's like so, and they built some models to be multilingual, an agentic platform. They haven't built it, but they're trying to build it, and basically they can replace the call center, more or less. And you have agents responding it, and actually does work.
But again, that's a call center function. I think that one works. Well, first of all, there's two things. When you have an enterprise, large company, you cannot use these startups because they're not enterprise integration. I believe the governance at most very large companies prohibits most of the employees from just taking off the shelf.
So if you go through all the most of the startups like us, they went through GDPR, SOC 2 Type 2, and stuff like that. So you need to spend enough money on the certification and audit. So let's say I can mention the biggest 5 competitors we have at the moment, and they do actually work with big banks and stuff like that. Like we do have funds and banks, and they require the certifications. So if you are SOC 2 Type 2, which is very difficult, it's 2 years, complete audit checking of your entire infrastructure. And so this is what is really working. All of these players, banks and funds, they are very bad at doing technology. They can't do it. They think they can. You can't go and tell the CTO you are.
How do we connect that?
I think it's really interesting, and I think it's really helpful to hear your point of view of what is going to drive change. But I think what I'm getting out of this conversation is it's really who are the CEOs who are going to be visionary enough to understand that they have to get their reports and those reports to integrate the new technology in a fast and safe way. And those are going to be the winners. It doesn't matter if it's in retail, it doesn't matter if it's in healthcare, it doesn't matter if it's in energy, it's going to be across the board. I remember we, as board members, we went to Microsoft a couple of years ago, and that's why I'm like, it's not ChatGPT, it's Copilot that was launched 2 years ago. And in Peru, we're the biggest client of any multinational, whether it's HP, Microsoft, McKinsey, you name it. BZB's biggest client. So we actually got to sit with Satya Nadella for an hour right before they were launching Copilot. And it was interesting what he had to say, because some of what he had to say has come true in the last 2 years, and the other, I'm still waiting. Mm-hmm. And the thing that has happened is the cost of programmers has gone way down. But what hasn't happened, for example, is he thought there was just going to have a positive transformation in healthcare. Why? Because a lot of the reading of medical diagnoses can be done much faster and cheaper, and therefore there's going to be people that are going to have access to healthcare that today you only have in the first world. And I see that slowly inching, but I haven't seen it transform in 2 years. I love all the points you're making, because it's really making me realize it's about how leadership motivates their talent to integrate this correctly.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned about Microsoft and Copilot. That's an interesting use case, because obviously Microsoft has been the first mover on generative AI. And I am a kind of a first-hand user. Why? Because I dealt with this in 2020, 2021, when basically with their AI lab and their effort with OpenAI, and they obviously create their own OpenAI at the end of the day. If it wasn't Microsoft, there wouldn't be an OpenAI anyway, and we all know that. So if you use today Copilot, it's not integrated. They try to integrate it with the whole Microsoft suite and products. And why? Why do you think it's not? So why you can't build a proper PowerPoint presentation with Copilot? You can't, it doesn't work. We all know that. So why?
I don't know. You're the expert.
I do,
I wish
but I do know the answer.
What is the answer? Because it's very frustrating.
You know the answer? I believe that they have realized to run a Copilot Excel, it's not that they can't do it. It's more expensive. So Microsoft has all positives on there. Why Microsoft is the only one that is losing the stock? If you go on NASDAQ and check it, and it's not performing as well as as Google or Nvidia. Why? Because to run and maintain this Gen AI infrastructure is costing Microsoft, and they admitted, Nadella admitted several times, that it's costing them too much money. Quite simple. They can't sell a Copilot license that costs $14 a month, integrating the Office suite on the other suites, okay? And then make sure that the users, chatting users every day, it doesn't cover the cost Microsoft is having.
Right, which was the point that we made at the beginning of the discussion,
slow it
was
down,
that
basically.
until there is
An infrastructure.
an infrastructure change
Yes.
in the cost of using these
course,
products,
it's clear.
there is no future for this, because it
Janet.
can't be used at scale, whether it's individual, small companies, or enterprise, in a cost-efficient manner. And all these data centers that are being created based on the current cost of usage make no sense if you think that the current cost of usage is fundamentally non-profitable.
It's still the same.
As opposed to, Uber, who, lost money for so long, but basically the amount they charge the drivers is enough to make them profitable, right? It's a cost plus model. And in the long term, it was a cost plus
So
model.
it's quite simple. So look, if you read some of the stuff, they talk about, Google is investing in nuclear plants, in the USA. They targeted a couple of nuclear plants that were shut down to create that kind of energy to power their own plant. So they understand that. That's why Google was the slowest one. They're slowing down because the entire infrastructure built up doesn't support the Gen AI use case. We don't have it, okay? And so they are obviously investing in R&D, research and development. They're looking at cheaper technologies, which I believe is the photonic one, okay? Not using the microchips technology, not using obviously the copper reading and the 0-1, old school stuff, but is looking at laser, looking at terabytes processing with laser fast technology, new hardware, okay? And until this is in place, I think they will slow down a little bit, okay? And so you have startups, like me, I'm very careful, but you have startups and VCs, they don't understand anything. Yeah. And so they're channeling this money into these things that will wipe out. It's they will not be there in 1 year or 2 years. And we're seeing many cases here, like in New York, tons of them.
Well, I definitely think that is historically correct. I just think the numbers are getting out of control.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure it portends well for the individual investor, right? As individual investors are being allowed to enter into riskier products through their retirement accounts, which we've seen the changes in the regulations in the last year, I think that there have to be some guardrails, because they really could put a very negative little, insert negativity into those retirement accounts that millions of people in the United States are counting on to, live their future selves. And that's really scary, right? If all of a sudden your 401k owns oh my gosh, we got you into OpenAI in 2025, and then it's worth zero in 2027.
Yeah.
That could be a problem. Or they got you into crypto, and I get the feeling you're not a crypto enthusiast, which neither am I, to be honest. And because I don't see a use case. I see a use case for stable coins, I do. But I don't see any use case for crypto other than for money laundering. So I don't give it a future.
Yeah.
But if that's in people's portfolios, there's going to be some pain.
Patricia, wrap us up.
I'll give you an example, right? There's certain industries that we think may be far removed from agentic AI, potentially. But I think of some, a portfolio company that comes to mind might be a retailer, a luxury retailer, right? Or an Abercrombie and Fitch, or a Williams-Sonoma. How are those two CEOs, which, if you look at the returns of those two companies, you're like, oh, I wish I had just invested in that. How are those, for example, those two CEOs going to figure out where AI fits in their industry model to make sure that they sell more than, an Abercrombie Fitch's who's their competitor, whoever that is, in Williams-Sonoma. I don't know if it's Crate and Barrel, whatever it is. But the retail channel is going to exist, and people are going to wear clothes, right? That we know. I think. I could be wrong, but in my estimation, people are going to wear clothes for the foreseeable future. So Abercrombie & Fitch may be the company dressing the 20-somethings 10 years from now, or there may be some up-and-comer that uses AI to eat their lunch. And that could be either in the design, the production, the marketing, or the delivery channel. It is up to that CEO, Fran Horowitz, to figure out how she's going to fight that battle. Right. And the same for Williams-Sonoma. We can see that in retail. We can go to a different channel. We can go to healthcare, right? Is Elevance, is Gail Boudreaux going to be the smartest CEO in the room and figure out how to incorporate AI readings of MRIs and CAT scans, et cetera, in such a way that makes it so cheap that that's the preferred, healthcare delivery system in the United States. So this is what has been very helpful for me to get your expertise and to have the questions asked is, how is this going to affect? And there's going to be winners and losers. Okay, so I have a question. I'll tell you what my business problem is, and you give me what startups to look at that you think I can get some extra juice to figure out how. Okay. We have great returns. Okay. Right? Our fund has returns, has 3-year track record, is outperforming. We can't scale. We need to find more investors. So that is a marketing issue, but it's and also a distribution issue. So with AI, tools we've been using are how to make collateral faster. What we're looking for, and I've tried to have Copilot do this, failed miserably, is every conversation we have, we record on Fireflies and we put into Salesforce CRM. And what I tried to have kind of a Copilot do, but it couldn't do, right, is can Copilot dig into all the conversations we've had in the last year and tell us which are the most important calls to make so that we get more allocations?
You're talking about Microsoft Copilot.
Yeah, that's the Copilot we have, Microsoft.
So no, Microsoft Copilot can't do that.
How do I know who are the most likely independent registered investment advisors to have their clients invest in the WCEO? Who has that database? Who can mine that database for me?
So there are some startups that are connected to good databases, good data sources that have integrated that kind of functionality. Okay, I can mention a few, although they are kind of potentially my competitors, but I don't, honestly, I don't have an issue. So they claim, I'm not convinced they work that well, but they claim one of them is definitely Agwan. Agwan, they connected to FactSet, they connected to various databases that are interesting for you. Then obviously there is AlphaSense. AlphaSense as a use case. AlphaSense is connected to, it's like a search engine. They deploy GenAI across the board. And so these two, I think they would respond to your use case. They are, AlphaSense is old school technology. And in the end of the day, they just have a good sales operation, marketing offices. But it works, kind of they spend. I don't think they are GenAI visionary innovators. They're just marketers in general, but they're making money, okay, in my opinion. And these are the only, I'd say today, according to my real knowledge, because we're talking about finance, and so the financial use case for GenAI is the most advanced one, way more advanced than anything else you can possibly imagine. The healthcare, manufacturing, whatever it is, as in any type of IT, technology transformation, finance picked up this thing before anybody else.
Patricia, thank you so much for coming today and having this chat, sharing so much about the progress that you're seeing and the amazing work that women are doing as leaders and how that's impacting investing.
Yeah, I thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed learning how the adoption of AI is going to infiltrate all the different industries in the U.S. and how leaders are going to need to process that in order to be successful.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Wonderful, Patricia. Thank you. Thank you for coming.